Hello everyone, welcome back to this video series titled Kyrgyzstan, Another Puppet State for the New World Order. And I titled it that because that's exactly what it is. And I'm rolling into this third video of the series that could possibly be four, but I'm going to shoot for three. Just so much information that I would like to provide in these videos and squeeze it in there, but also be able to give you my own take on things, my own perspective of the information, of the history, and the research I've done. So, but part of the research that I've came across was this, and this was not expected, but just like everything else, when I research other countries, like when I did Haiti, you find out like the same culprits, same powers that be are always there manipulating things. And so you have this thing called the Great Game, which is a term used for the strategic rivalry and conflict between the British Empire and the Russian Empire for supremacy in Central Asia. So how do I see that? Well, I see the Rothschild family and the Romanov family, basically. That's what I see. I see New World Order, I see Illuminati, and I see ruling families vowing for territory and power. And so that's basically how I see it. And that's how I see this history really being. You can say the British Empire and the Russian Empire, but it's not based off the people, right? It's not based off the people actually running these countries. No, they're based from the top down, and those are just a certain area, a certain part of the farm, the global farm of stock, of sheep, of slaves, of cattle, of workers. And it will never change unless we give up this lust for government and thinking that government is the answer, and religion is the answer. So that's the point of these videos, because this area of the world is very important, because you have China over here, you have Russia over here, and then you have the UK and the US, who happen to be all up in there, all up in it, guys. They're all around this country, in this area in Central Asia. They went to Iraq so that they can get to Iran, but they can't take out Iran right now. They can't invade Iran for whatever reasons. They're not doing it. But it has to do with power, and it has to do with oil and how it's going to run to China, and the Russians don't want that, and so you got a lot of that going on. But I just wanted to point this out, that this is an actual legitimate thing, part of history. And so it says here, a second, less intensive phase followed the Bolshevik Revolution around 1917. The Great Game dwindled down after the UK, the US, and Russia became allies during World War II. And of course, if you've done a little bit of history, you know that people like Marx and Lenin and Trotsky and all of them, Hitler, Stalin, they were all put into power. The communism was spread by the same people, from the top down, not from the bottom up. It was from the top down, and of course they spread this philosophy of communism or statehood, and then they get out of town. They let a bunch of millions of people die in the process. And then they create this Cold War, which is nothing but a bunch of shit. But that's not about Kyrgyzstan. But in a sense, it is, right? Because that's what it comes down to. So that's why I'm making these videos, so that you can get good, so you can find out a little bit more on what's going on. And I just found it even more interesting is that you have this part where it says, from the British perspective, the Russian Empire's expansion into Central Asia threatened to destroy the jewel in the crown of the British Empire in India. The East India Company. The British feared, which is global, kind of like globalism, right? After the British feared that Afghanistan would become a staging post for the Russian invasion of India. And then you read down here and look at this. It was with these thoughts in mind, in 1838, the British launched the first Anglo-Afghan War and attempted to impose a puppet regime. The regime was short-lived and unsustainable without British military support. By 1842, Mods were attacking the British on the streets of Kabul, and British garrisons were forced to abandon Kabul due to constant civilian attacks. So see, they tried it in 1840, it didn't work. So I just wanted to explain this to you guys. Most of you probably already know the strategy of how the elites and the New World Order and the powers that be, how they carry out warfare. It's very stealthy, it's behind the scenes, and they do things like Webster Tarpley, a geopolitical analyst, just said on Russian TV, sorry, about how they use like Zbigniew Brzezinski, how he takes credit for bringing down communism in Russia by dragging them into a war with Afghanistan, right, to drain them economically. And that's the type of things that they do. So, and then again, they're using Afghanistan, according to Tarpley, to let it spill over into the areas of all the stands like Pakistan, because they really want to go into Pakistan. In fact, the U.S. is already there bombing civilians and people in Pakistan, and they have a puppet government there as well. And so it's the same thing. Wherever they want to go, they just they get into a country and they call it terrorism, right? They have to legitimize their being there, having a military presence and bombing innocent people and just destroying their economies. It's in order to force what? Democracy. So, but that's kind of like my point. It's kind of a new type of warfare where you don't just have France and Russia going at it, and then Russia takes over a bunch of land. It's not like that anymore. Now it's about economies. It's about getting tax revenue and slaves, and and they do it in such a way to where they get two countries. If you're Russia, you want to get two other countries to fight each other, so you can go in there and play the diplomat, and that you can do your thing without playing the bad guy. So sorry, I just probably went off too far there, but let's get back to Kyrgyzstan. From Chinese to Russian control, right? Because it was what the Arabs, they said, Persians that were in control of them, and then it was the Mongolians, the Asians, then the Chinese, and then so you have here in the late 19th century and 1800s, it going from Chinese rule to Russian control or rule. The majority part of what is today Kyrgyzstan was ceded to Russia through two treaties between China and Russia. So he's just passing off a part of passing off a part of their farm. The territory, then known as in Russia as Kyrgyz, was formerly incorporated into the Russian Empire in 1876, and this is the important part. The Russian takeover was met with numerous revolts against the Tsarist authority, and many of the Kyrgyz opted to move to Pamirs in Afghanistan. And of course it says that in addition, the suppression of the 1916 rebellion against the Russian rule caused many Kyrgyz later to migrate to China. It says it was more of a string of civil wars. More than half of the Kyrgyz population was killed during these revolts. Since many ethnic groups in the region were and still are split between neighboring states, it was common to move back and forth. And in 1936, Kyrgyzstan was officially part of the Soviet Union, and this is a little museum here, a Lenin Museum. It says a National Museum, formerly Lenin Museum. You can see a little picture of him in there, right? Leninism. It's the hardcore military on the streets bashing heads of the state. Any way to get power. And that's Leninism, right? That's a different form of control. In less developed countries. And then you have what? In more developed countries like the US, UK, and that, we have Fabianism, which is more laid back, not in your face, where people, the slaves, voluntarily give up their freedoms and their rights. And it's more oriented towards long-term, right? Not fast control and changes. It's slow, gradually over time. So you got these two types of control mechanisms working at the same time, slow and fast, hardcore and less hardcore, but they're achieving the same thing, and that's a world government. Join me again in the next video.